win it. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11 and breaking down stacks for tonight's slate. We got a full 15-game slate here. A lot of rain early on in these ballparks that are on the East Coast: New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore. Definitely keep an eye on the radars there. If things are looking a little bit risky, they start to clear up. Maybe later on, we're looking at a late start. You maybe not want to take that shot with Washington, just given the fact that you really have no idea what the hell they're going to do whenever it rains or whenever it even doesn't rain. It causes the risk. But, games in Baltimore, it's a little bit more intriguing. The game in Yankee Stadium, there's obviously some offenses. But, I think the stacks both in Baltimore and Seattle are obviously playable. If things start to clear out, you can look at these offenses. I don't mind the Washington side. I don't mind the Miami side here. That's a bummer if that game does get rained out because those are two of the poorer pitchers on this slate. And in that ballpark, I don't expect them to be high-owned, and I obviously don't expect them to be high-owned with the weather that's happening. So, going that route, if it clears out, I think Washington and Miami are both actually sneaky stacks on tonight's slate, just hoping that the weather clears out. But outside of that, Boston's an intriguing one here. Brett Anderson's a guy who, obviously last time he's pitched was with LA, I believe, and, we haven't seen much of him since. Brett Anderson, he's pitched most out of the bullpen this year, 383 WOBA to righties. He does have a decently high ground ball rate, but I don't mind some of the right-handed bats here. Nunez, Betts, Hanley, Chris Young, Bogarts. Rajai Davis should sneak into the lineup there. So, there's going to be some options. There's going to be some more right-handed bats than usual in that Boston lineup. The Rogers Center is obviously pretty friendly to hit. Hanley's a guy who, him and Devers are the only guys with over a 200 ISO against lefties this year. I know we haven't seen a ton of pop, but still Betts and Young are guys that I don't mind tossing in, and Nunez as well. So for me, I like Boston here. They're going to be low owned. You're not going to get a ton of ownership on them. But moving on here, this is actually one of my favorite games to target. That's New York and Cincinnati. Not really looking so much on the Mets side of things here, just because that lineup isn't all that appealing. Brandon Nimmo, Juan Lagares, I don't want to take too much roster spots and use those guys, but guys like Cabrera, Flores, Dominic Smith, Rosario, I don't mind punting away with them. I think it's better one-off territory. I'm actually more inclined to stack Cincinnati here in this spot. Chris Flexen, 423 WOBA to righties this year, 390 WOBA to lefties. Ground ball rate's pretty pedestrian. Obviously, Cozart, Hamilton, Votto, Duvall, Jeanette, Suarez, Schebler. You name it. All those guys outside of Hamilton, over a 200 ISO against righties this year. This has been a team that, they've been a little bit quiet here and there, but at this ballpark, against Flexen, especially the lefties, they're 45% fly ball rate. Votto, Jeanette, Schebler, very intriguing options, and then obviously Duvall. And you just look at Flexen, he doesn't strike out guys, 10% strikeout rate against lefties, 17% against righties. You look at that Cincinnati total, 5.6 so far on the day. I really like it, especially if people are going to be focusing on cores. It's not expensive at all. Outside of Votto, you're getting these guys for fairly cheap. So the Reds come in as one of my favorite stacks on the night there. So outside of that, I think we can kind of look at the Twins again. I know James Shields has actually been somewhat decent of late. Obviously coming off a matchup where we stacked the Twins last time. If people are going to be off of it, if people are going to look at James Shields and go, you know what, he's actually been decent. He hasn't allowed a ton. I'm going to be fading away, but I like Dozier. I like Buxton, who's red hot, Kepler, Kenneth Vargas. Shields is still not a guy that I don't mind just fading all of a sudden because he's had a couple of good starts in a row. So, Shields, 423 WOBA to lefties. I think that's where you're going to be looking at the most, but I definitely don't mind some of the righties like Dozier. Obviously, and Buxton, who's red hot. But, looking at this team, they've been swinging the bat well. They're in the midst of a playoff race. They're in the wild card right now. They got to keep rolling. One of the higher run totals on the night. They're back at home where Minnesota's not a bad place to hit. Decent weather there. So a pretty good spot to target. So we'll talk cores now next. This is a spot where, Herman Marquez, Mike Fulmer, we didn't really see it completely pan out. We haven't seen cores completely pan out a lot this year. Obviously, we kind of always look at major stacks, but if the entire East Coast is going to be rained out tonight or going to be looking for trouble, obviously the ownership is going to take a big jump here. Fulmer's been a guy I don't usually like to target against. The strikeout rate really hasn't been there. We've seen any pitcher go into Coors and they can get blown up at times. Fulmer's a decent ground ball guy, 53% against righties, 48% against lefties. He doesn't allow a ton of fly balls. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He doesn't allow a ton of power. I may be just looking at one-offs here. Obviously, anytime teams are in Coors, you can stack, but I'm going to be kind of focusing on some other games tonight. I don't mind the Colorado stack. Obviously, it's the usual suspects: LeMahieu, Blackmon, Arenado, Parra, Reynolds. Desmond, I know, is back. Lucroy. Carlos Gonzalez was scratched last night. But on the other side, German Marquez, he's a guy I don't mind targeting. Some of the righties, 235 ISO to righties this year. He's a lower ground ball guy, 334 WOBA. Kinsler, Upton, I believe Miguel Cabrera left the game last night. That's a little bit iffy. If he's out, it's kind of a tough lineup to actually stack, but Castellanos would be in play. If Cabrera's there, it might just kind of be looking at more of a one-off territory because Marquez hasn't really been all that bad against lefties. And I know that Detroit will probably toss in a bat like Presley, who was in there last night hitting second, who was kind of like the Aducci from a few weeks ago. So Detroit, obviously in play. Coors is always going to be in play, but, it's not something I'm going to make a priority on tonight's slate. So moving forward, Angels are a team I don't mind stacking in this late slate here. Going up against Chris Smith. Chris Smith is definitely one of the weaker pitchers on this slate. I don't mind targeting him at all. Mike Trout obviously had the day off yesterday, but I like this Calhoun, Pujols, Trout, Maben stack. Outside of Trout, they're on the cheaper side. You can even look at Simmons. 5.4 run total. It is definitely on the warmer side there in LA, upper 80s tonight. Wind blowing out just a little bit. So a little bit favorable conditions in the ballpark that I usually don't like to stack in, but definitely going to be looking the Angels away for some value and for some on the contrarian side and kind of go that route. So definitely a few stacks to look at tonight. Be aware of the weather and good luck, guys.